Adar felt her heart stop as she walked into Bruno's house. Something was very wrong. The air felt heavy and cold. Her eyes moved around the slightly dark room, and she saw women's underwear and clothes thrown everywhere. "My God! I have been tricked," she said in her mind. She thought about running, but it was too late. Bruno had already locked all the doors behind them. There were so many locks. But why would anyone need so many locks on their doors? Adar's legs began to shake as fear took over. She could only whisper a quick prayer as she faced the man she thought she loved, now revealed as one who is after her life. 2 weeks earlier, Adar sat with her friends in the school cafeteria. They were all laughing and talking about their exam results when a tall, handsome man walked up to their table. He was wearing expensive clothes and had a bright smile that made everyone stop talking. "Excuse me," he said, looking straight at Adar. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Adar's friends pushed her to go talk to him. "Go on, girl," they whispered. "Look how rich he looks." He introduced himself as Bruno, a final-year law student. "I've been seeing you around campus," he said softly. "Your beauty draws me in like a magnet. Even when I try to look away, I can't. I had to find the courage to talk to you. Even if you will reject me." Adar smiled, feeling special. "Why would I reject you? You haven't done anything wrong." "I'm Adar, by the way." Bruno's eyes lit up. Adar and Bruno. "Don't you think our names sound perfect together? Like it was meant to be." Adar gave him her phone number before going back to her friends, who couldn't stop talking about how lucky she was. "He's so rich," they said. "Did you see his car? It's the latest model." That evening, as Adar sat on her bed in her hostel room, her phone rang. It was Bruno. He didn't waste time with small talk. He told her about his wealthy father, a famous business consultant, and how he wanted to introduce Adar as his future wife. Adar felt like she was dreaming. But sometimes dreams can turn into nightmares. It all started as Bruno always ended their phone calls suddenly, saying he had business to handle. Adar ignored these red flags because she was already falling in love. Every morning, Bruno was the first person she talked to, and every night he was the last. But something felt off about how he would cut their conversations short. 3 weeks after they met, Bruno invited Adar to visit his house. She agreed, not knowing she was walking into danger. When Adar entered Bruno's room and saw all the women's underwear scattered around, she knew she had made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. Every door they had passed through was locked. She thought about her poor parents in the village who were struggling to pay her school fees. Adar fell to her knees, begging, "Please, I'm my parents' only child. They depend on me. Please don't hurt me. I really loved you when we met. But what I'm seeing here scares me." Bruno sat on the bed, looking at her without any emotion. "When you finish your drama, come to bed. You're an adult. You knew what to expect when you came here. I'm not going to kill you. You'll stay here for 1 week and give me your underwear each day to renew my wealth. You should have checked who I really was before falling for me. I lied about being a rich man's son. This is how I make my money." Bruno was blunt. He told Adar the terrible truth. "If you give me what I want, I will make you rich, but you will never be able to have children or get married." When Adar kept crying and refusing, Bruno tied her to the bed. What happened next was too horrible to describe. Adar's screams went unheard as Bruno forced himself on her. "I am a virgin, please, Bruno," Adar kept begging, but he did not care. The pain was unbearable. Bruno only stopped when Adar could barely breathe, but he wasn't finished. He continued torturing her through the night. The next morning, Adar could barely walk to the bathroom. Her face was swollen and her whole body hurt. Bruno came in and looked at her with surprise. "A 25-year-old virgin. That's rare these days. Your parents raised you well. Because of this, I'll only keep you for 4 days instead of a week. I won't take your underwear either. You'll just be my girlfriend who visited. I'll make you rich when you leave, I promise." Adar just kept crying, regretting ever coming to his house. That night, Bruno brought another girl to the room. He made Adar watch as he forced himself on the girl, who screamed and begged for help. Adar felt helpless, forced to witness such horror without being able to do anything. The next morning, Bruno locked the new girl in the bathroom and came back to Adar. Despite her injuries, he violated her again. After 4 days, Bruno asked for Adar's bank account number. He sent her 50 million naira. "Build a nice house for your parents," he said. "Take care of yourself too." Before Adar left, Bruno begged for forgiveness. He reminded her that he knew her village address and warned her not to tell anyone what happened. As Adar limped to the taxi, she prayed silently for God to punish Bruno. Back at her hostel, Adar told her roommate Diana she had been sick in the hospital. She could barely eat the rice Diana gave her. In the night, as she tried to sleep through the pain, Adar wondered how to explain the huge amount of money to her strict religious parents. The next day, Adar called Bruno on campus. He was surprised to hear from her. "Meet me at River Garden at 5 p.m., she said and hung up. When they met, Adar got straight to the point. "This money will cause problems. Everyone knows my family is poor. How will I explain suddenly becoming rich?" Bruno smiled. "Simple. I'll create an online competition with a 50 million naira prize. After 2 days, I'll announce you as the winner." Bruno organized a fake essay competition at the university. Without even reading any entries, he announced Adar as the winner. During the award ceremony, he whispered in her ear, "I hope you can forgive me now that you're famous on campus." Adar wanted to scream and tell everyone what kind of monster he really was. Back in her room, as her friends celebrated her victory, she cried silently. "He took my dignity," she thought, "but I'll use this money to help my parents." The next morning, Adar hired a driver and bought lots of food for her village. When she arrived, the whole village was celebrating. Her father had already killed a goat for a feast. During the celebration, the village elders blessed Adar. "This is just the beginning. You will bring more glory to our village. No harm will ever come to you." Adar gave them 300,000 naira for traditional gifts. The next day, engineers came to design a new 3-bedroom house for Adar's parents. The cost was 20 million naira, and they promised to finish in 1 month. Adar's parents moved in with relatives while construction began. During the housewarming celebration, Bruno showed up in his expensive car. Adar confronted him. "What are you doing here?" But Bruno ignored her, walking straight to the elders. He knelt down and spoke. "I organized the competition Adar won. You have a wonderful daughter. To celebrate this day, I'm giving 10 million naira for household items and 5 million for the elders. Also, I'm looking for a wife." Everyone except Adar clapped and praised him. Months later, Adar got sick with coughing, headaches, and fever. At the hospital, the doctor gave her devastating news. She was HIV positive. Adar sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to kill Bruno and then herself. That night, she couldn't sleep, thinking about how her village would treat her family if they found out. Adar paid a campus gang member 500,000 naira to borrow his gun. She called Bruno, saying she wanted to visit for the weekend. That night, she played along with his advances. After he fell asleep, she took out the gun and shot his thigh. As he woke up screaming, she told him about her HIV diagnosis. Then she shot him in the head. Instead of killing herself as planned, Adar decided to tell her story to warn other girls. She turned herself in to the police. In court, Adar told her whole story and showed evidence of Bruno's crimes. Despite this, the judge sentenced her to 10 years in prison. But a kind lawyer from her village, Mr. Thomas, believed in her innocence. He took her case to the Supreme Court. After a year of fighting, Mr. Thomas brought other women who Bruno had hurt to tell their stories. The Supreme Court set Adar free, saying the first court was wrong to ignore what Bruno had done to her. During her year in prison, Adar's health got worse. When she was freed, she went to 3 different hospitals for tests. To her surprise, they all showed the same thing. She had never had HIV. The first hospital had made a mistake. She had tuberculosis instead, which was curable. Adar cried with joy. Though she felt angry at the hospital's mistake, she was grateful because it had pushed her to stop Bruno from hurting more women. After getting better, Adar went back to school and graduated as one of the best students in data science. She got a good job with an international company. Because of what happened with Bruno, Adar didn't trust men anymore. But her best friend Beezy kept trying to set her up with her brother, Mr. Thomas, the lawyer who had helped free her. At first, Adar refused. But when she thought about how Mr. Thomas had fought for her without wanting anything in return, she agreed to meet him at a restaurant. Slowly, she fell in love again. Adar and Mr. Thomas had a beautiful wedding. During their reception, Adar spoke about her husband with tears in her eyes. "You fought for me when you didn't even know me. You saw good in me when others saw bad. Thank you for loving me. I'll stay with you forever." 2 years later, they had a baby boy named David. Mr. Thomas was always there for Adar during her pregnancy and birth. They built a happy family together. Adar's story became a lesson for young women everywhere. It taught them to be careful about trusting men too quickly just because they seem rich. But it also showed that even in the darkest times, there's always hope for a better tomorrow.
Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of African folktales. If you enjoyed this story, let me know by leaving a like and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to African Stories by Ace and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next tale. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and remember, every story holds a lesson.